Let us open the service with a short prayer. I like to call in the presence. In the presence of the One. Can you imagine being in the presence of the One Spirit? The one majestic energy of the universe raining upon you, sprinkling on you, loving you, calling you, being you. Let us take a moment to acknowledge the presence within us this moment. And let us use this moment to create a world that works for everyone. A moment where we can state our prayer within us for peace on earth, for we know peace on earth this moment in our hearts, in the presence of the One. We know joy and liberation, freedom. We know safety for all women, children, where all are fed, all are clothed, all are housed. All the animal humane society centers are closed because all pets have found a forever home. Let us know this deep in our hearts, that we are all safe and loved, that we are all precious, and that all of our worries are set in the pond of life where we no longer have to worry. We just set them on the water and allow Spirit to manage all those things we cannot manage. And we find peace here in the presence of the One. Let us extend our graciousness, our kindness each day to our neighbor. And never let us forget to say, I love you at every opportunity. I release this prayer into the law, knowing that as I do so, this prayer shall never return to me void. And so it is.
I'm Jeffrey McNutt, spiritual practitioner here at the center. And to continue Dino's beautiful welcome, I'm going to share with you some words from the Book of Soul written by Mark Nepo. And I think it's a perfect way to prelude into this wonderful talk that Kenneth and Jay are going to give us. There are always two sides of knowing. One is the quest for meaning, the endless forging of what is essential in order to live. The other is our attachment to a particular view, idea, feeling, or belief. This is the trap of conviction, the stubbornness that turns truth into an assumption or conclusion. It's the trap of conviction that has Israelis and Palestinians distrust each other without ever having met, while young Christians in the Midwest run with no reason from Islamic children. As John Kabat-Zinn puts it, if you're too convicted in your opinions or beliefs, perhaps you are a convict, imprisoned within the confines of your own understandings. In this way, unquestioned convictions are old thoughts, hardened into seldom tested beliefs. Instead of bringing us closer to life and to each other, our hardened views enforce patterns that keep us from reclaiming the common ground we all stand on. Part of the riddle of being human resides in this question. If love and truth are in us, why are they so hard to find and grow between us? It seems that love and truth wait like seeds within us. If never watered, they never grow. But if what lives in us is watered, the vastness of life enters our heart, like rain soaking seeds waiting in soil. In time, there's a fertile silence that takes the place of words as we break the surface. And living with that, our pains give way to joy. How vastness enters our heart is part of the human journey. For everyone will be dropped into the depth of life. What matters is how we meet that moment and who comes with us. Meeting that chance is how the deeper journey of life begins. Great love and great suffering come to all to remind us how rare it is that we're here at all. Then it's our job to stay awake and aware, kind and loving. Ultimately, we're challenged to find something lasting to stand on and something noble to stand for. Being human is such a mystery, filled with blessings and hardships, often one leading to the other. And through my own spin from blessing to hardship and back, I've learned that when all else fails, I'm often forced to stand exactly where I am until the ground of being that lives forever comes up through my feet, making me a little more solid. So I invite you to reflect on what you stand on. What is your deepest bedrock or foundation? How does it solidify your place in this life? And what do you stand for? What are the values and ethics that, that guide your truest actions in the world? In a personal way, how is what you stand on related to what you stand for? I invite you to reflect on your hardened convictions, obsessions, and excesses as a way to diagnose what keeps you from what you stand on. I invite you to listen to your experience as a way to put down what's in the way. For inner work begins with the vow to get closer to life.
I'm telling you. Yeah, it's good to see everyone.
True.
And welcome. I am glad to see some familiar faces. Today we're here to talk, just in a word, about habits, right?
Yes, habits and patterns.
Yeah.
Patterns.
You know, something came to mind. During my time as a social worker, I've done home visits, and I would go to people's homes and I would ask them, what do you all do on a regular day around here? How does your family get through the day? And they would describe a certain day, usually a very idyllic day. And then I would be able to see where the couch was worn and how the remote control was worn and how maybe there are patterns in the carpet that maybe matched up with the story or they didn't. And so it always revealed to me that there's something else going on about what we're doing. And maybe that initial question gets responded to with who we think we are and who we want people to know we are. So I take both things into account. And I realize that a pattern is not an identity. The pattern is learned, it's inherited, it's repeated, it's embodied, and we're not stuck, but we are patterned. And we develop these patterns because our cells have a memory. They organize around the solutions that we make up for ourselves in any given moment. So with that in mind, just notice that today we're holding this simple truth that we're not stuck. We're patterned. A pattern can be inherited. A pattern is real, but it's not the whole truth of who we are. So Jay, take us into how that matters, I guess, emotionally and relationally.
Very good. Well, I'm here to be a disruptor. Are you ready to be disrupted from a pattern? How about that? Okay. If you have ever felt disappointment, raise your hand, please. How would you like to disrupt disappointment? Put your hand down. So when it comes to patterns, when it comes to like really being able to break things, I really love what you said. You said that patterns aren't real. Habits aren't real. And sometimes we get into a pattern of disappointment. So when it comes to disappointment, there are usually a couple of things involved. One is usually expectations, right? Are we familiar with expectations? And then the other would be accountability. Because I have an expectation that I want you to be accountable to my vision of what needs to be. And, when my vision of what needs to be isn't done, I'm disappointed. Okay? So what happens? What do we do with that? Well, today we're talking about pattern disruption. We're talking about breaking that. So what if we thought about patterns of blame and trust, and then we decide to challenge that? One of the study traditions that I come with is A Course in Miracles. And in A Course in Miracles, they really ask that we look at the difference between love and fear. Love and fear, love and fear. And when we address change, are we addressing change through love or fear? What are our choices in this moment? So, A Course in Miracles asks us to remember who we are. Even through disappointment, remember who we are. Even through expectations, to remember all of us, right? So, one of the things I'd like you to think about is this. When it comes to disappointment, I am not to blame for pain, illness, struggle, or inherited conditioning. Am I powerless? No. I choose my power, and healing begins when shame loosens and choice returns. So, a lot of us hear the word pattern and we start blaming ourselves. I have a pattern, you have a pattern, let's get our patterns together, right? This month's teaching gives us a deeper truth. We are not to blame for our own pain or our inherited conditioning, nor are we powerless. So, Kenneth, let's move towards remembering. Take us into how belief shapes patterns.
Yes. So one of the things that brought me to mental health, of which I wasn't a great fan of when I first got into the field, was this theoretical framework by Linda James Myers called belief systems analysis. And she really started to get me, I started to, once I studied her work, think more about what belief was organizing the experiences that I was having. Because these patterns would show up in thoughts, and they show up as habits in our body and in our responses, in our relationships, in our self-talk. But recognition of these things is not shame, okay? Brene Brown is a social worker who talks a lot about shame. And she talks about how shame helps us remember things that we don't want to repeat, but that's what makes change possible.
Right.
So in belief systems analysis, we ask what belief is organizing this experience, and what have I been taught to repeat? What have I learned to repeat about my worth, about my body, about my future, about my right to rest, about my ability to heal? And so we find ourselves replaying really stressful thoughts. And we start to ignore our bodies. In belief systems analysis, there's this element that catches most people off guard called diunital logic. Okay, so diunital is the opposite of dichotomy. And if you get it, that's a joke, kind of, almost. But anyway, diunital is DI and then the word unity or unital, meaning that we bring these things together. And so we try to avoid this use of the word but. So I say, remove your but from the situation because it's not helping. It's not helping at all. We're going to practice that. And usually our buts come with a lot of harsh talk and self-shame. So I am supposed to be A, but I'm B, right? And that recognition of that difference is really just what we call dissonance. It's what makes human beings so fascinating, is that we can hold one idea of ourselves in our minds and exist in another idea.
Expectations.
And our expectations, exactly. So we give up the harshness of the but. We say and. Okay. So Jay, tell us a little bit about what happens when we stop meeting those patterns alone.
Meeting the patterns alone. We, you know, I'm kind of caught up right now because, healing is something that we often feel we're supposed to go through alone, and that's not necessarily true. Healing can occur in community. It's when your community sees you as whole, how do you feel? When your community sees you as broken, you're going to respond to that. When instead, we can receive healing from the community as whole. We are not alone. We do need to remember we are one. We are still part of one. And it is through togetherness that we begin to embrace a larger type of acceptance of pattern breaking.
Yes.
We don't have to break it alone.
Right.
Think about this. Feedback. Think about feedback that we get from our community. Sometimes we hear it, sometimes we choose not to. It's still in our ears, it's still in our acceptance, it's still in our spirit. It's also a way that we get to accept sharing oneness. Oneness. Is that an expectation or is that an acceptance? Is it feedback? Is it true? How does that ring in my spirit? What's going on? Is this a pattern that I'm able to review and reflect? Or is it one that says, that's tone deaf, but thank you for the sharing. I appreciate that a lot. So when a pattern becomes visible, shame does not have to run the room. Sometimes the first interruption is being witnessed with honesty and care, in togetherness. So sometimes the new pattern begins when we let ourselves be accompanied. So Kenneth, you want to bring in this experience that you've been learning from the Kellogg?
Yes, I've been honored to have a fellowship as a Kellogg Fellow, and it's been really interesting how we've been asked to seek out feedback from people around us. I think a lot of us think that we're really good at seeking feedback until a corporation like Kellogg gets behind your feedback effort. Then it gets real. And what we notice is that, denial can be big like a river in Egypt. And so we have to seek this feedback, and then we have to trust the feedback, right? Patterns aren't just personal. The patterns that we live in are created by other people and contributed to by other people in our lives. We share our world. They're reinforced by systems, our roles, our environments, expectations, right? Repeated conditions. If you're constantly faced with some sort of stressor, you're going to respond to that in a way. And it requires that interruption and intentional cultivation in order for us to feel like we're taking our power to be who we wish to be, to bring our own vision to focus. So when we're doing this feedback, when we did it at Kellogg, it was this 360 feedback. We sent surveys to people. If you want one about me, I'll send you one. You can fill out a 360 survey about me. Because I know how to trust now, and I know where my lines of trust are around receiving that feedback. And so we do want to consider to whom we are listening, because the marketplace will tell you you don't have enough money. People you went to high school with will tell you you're not successful enough, right? Somebody that may tell you you're not attractive enough. So we have to decide to whom it is we're listening and how much trust we're going to put into that. These patterns don't just live inside individuals. They get reinforcements, they get inducements. And so these are things that are often reflections of larger conditions that keep feeding those patterns. So how do we check that out in like everyday life, Jay? How does that show up?
Well, I happen to have brought an example.
Boy.
I remember growing up, always, like saying, well, we don't have the money for this, so I guess we're not rich. If we're not rich, then I guess you must be poor. But, we're able to get along.
Right.
Growing up, that was a pattern of thinking. We may not have had everything, but we were able to like get by. When I went to college, I learned about this phenomenon called trust fund babies. I said, oh, that sounds nice. A trust fund baby. So I decided to adopt a new pattern of thinking. I said, I trust the funds will be there when I need them. And to this day, they are. It's just that I've learned to challenge this pattern of abundance. Abundance is sometimes what we want, sometimes what we need. I know that there are a lot of different sayings and teachings that we, challenge ourselves with around abundance. And I think what I just like really saw was that as I grow up, I don't want to be a trust fund baby. I want to be a trust fund mature person. Here's my new trust fund affirmation. I'm trusting in the resources of the divine. I'm trusting in the resources of the divine. I'm not going to limit myself anymore. I'm really affirming that today and tomorrow can be even better than right now. And right now is a very blessed moment.